My story isn't about meeting love. It's about meeting an addiction that's successfully masqueraded as love. I, Alex, was living in this high-rise downtown condo complex when I met Lina. She was renting an apartment on the same floor as me, but I never saw her husband, not once. She was always alone, and that fact instantly fostered a sense of mysterious intimacy in me. She looked perfect, but her eyes held a sadness as deep as the ocean. We started with casual encounters at the gym, then short conversations by the elevator. She quickly confessed that she was on a pause from her husband, a successful investor who was constantly traveling in Asia. "We're just breathing," she explained with a bitter smile. I was instantly charmed by her elegance and that forbidden air of loneliness. I was single and immediately fell in love with the idea of rescuing her from that breathing marriage. The first thing that truly connected us was a broken lock on her door. She asked for help, I fixed it, and suddenly I was inside her perfect yet empty apartment. Everything was new, expensive, but lifeless, like a movie set. We drank wine, and she started talking about her marriage. Not about fights, but about financial control. Her husband controlled her accounts, her insurance, her life. She was in a golden cage that could snap shut if she made one wrong move. We started dating. These were secret, nervous rendezvous. We met in my apartment, just a few doors down from hers. The adrenaline of being so close to the forbidden was intoxicating. We could hear the elevator chime, and every time it stopped, our hearts seized up. She always came in the same long gray coat, which she wore like armor. Our affair quickly escalated into a constant physical passion. We couldn't get enough of each other. We spent hours curled up on my sofa where I felt I could fill the void of her marriage. She confessed that I was the first man who had made her feel alive again. That was powerful fuel for my ego. I was convinced that I was finally the one. One night, after a particularly intimate encounter, she woke up in my bed in a panic. "I can't do this. It's too dangerous," she whispered. I asked what she was afraid of. "He was supposed to be back in 2 weeks, but he called. He's flying in tomorrow." All her elegance vanished. She was just a frightened woman facing financial ruin. She gathered her things, put on her gray coat, and said, "It's over, Alex. I have to go back to my life." My role as savior was done. My obsession was just beginning. Ever since Lina disappeared behind the door of her apartment, my world had narrowed to one point: her door. I heard her enter. I heard her lock the deadbolt I had fixed. Then, the husband arrived. I only saw him once, getting out of the elevator, tall, impeccably dressed, carrying a briefcase, radiating power. The symbol of everything I wasn't. Lina stopped answering calls. My messages, full of pleading and anger, went unanswered. I couldn't understand. How could she just throw away 3 months of real life? I was furious. I started watching her windows, her car. My job suffered. I became functionally impaired. A week later, she texted. Just one message. "He will find out. My accounts, my insurance. He will destroy me. I can't talk. Please, forget." That was all I needed to know. I was her leverage, the piece of blackmail she was terrified to use. But I couldn't forget. I felt used, like a cheap mercenary. I began bombarding her with messages, not to get her back, but to force her to acknowledge our feelings. I wrote her about details only we knew, about our spot, about what she whispered to me. I wanted her to feel the guilt. She changed her number. I tracked her down through mutual acquaintances and wrote again. She replied with a legally dry email, clearly written by her husband or his lawyer.
Further contact would be considered harassment. I was enraged. I knew she was trapped, and I had to get her out. My obsession peaked when I saw her husband leave. He was at the airport, and I knew he was gone for a long trip. This was my chance. I manufactured an excuse to talk to the concierge. I claimed I had a mail error and needed to check her box. Eventually, I obtained a spare key to her empty apartment. I went inside. It smelled like her expensive perfume, but the apartment was sterile, as if no one lived there. I walked through the rooms, searching for any trace of us, of our passion, and I found it. At the bottom of her utility drawer lay a crumpled receipt from the store where we bought wine on our first night. It was a physical, tangible trace. I took that receipt as the only proof that everything had been real. My mind was already unhealthy. A few days later, I received a letter. It was an official document. Lina had terminated her lease and moved out. She vanished from my life completely. I started drinking. I kept texting her old number, knowing she wouldn't receive them, but I couldn't stop. I had to remind her who she really was.
My behavior became increasingly erratic. I started emailing her account, which she only used for bills. I threatened to expose her to her husband for all her secrets. Not about cheating, but about trying to escape him. A lie that would hit his pride. It worked. She replied, but not to me. A letter came from a lawyer. It was an official restraining order. It stated that I had invaded her privacy, made threats, and stalked her. I was shocked. I hired an expensive lawyer. I thought she wouldn't dare, but she did. She chose security over any connection with me. I couldn't calm down. I thought if I could just see her, I could explain everything. I violated the order. I drove to the suburbs, to that huge house. I waited for her by the mailbox. When she came out, I walked up. I didn't yell. I just said, "Lina, I need to talk, please." She looked at me, and there was no passion, no hate, only pure, icy fear. She pressed an alarm button on her phone. I knew I had lost. I left, not in anger, but with agonizing emptiness. I lost my job. I lost friends who were tired of listening to my endless monologues about used love. I realized that I wasn't a savior, but a predator. I was obsessed, and she was just trying to survive. I am in therapy now. They tell me I must let her go and focus on myself. But in quiet moments, I still see her in that gray coat, and I feel betrayed. I sent her gifts for the holidays, not her husband, obviously, just to remind her I existed. Recently, I found out she had a baby. Not mine. She had completely closed that chapter, and she did it immediately after returning. My biggest mistake? It wasn't the affair. It was that I confused addiction with salvation and believed my love was stronger than her financial fear. I shouldn't have entered that second apartment. I should have just closed the door and let her breathe as she wanted. But I couldn't. And now I'm paying the price for my obsession and invasion. My story is a warning about how easily you can cross the line from infatuation to obsession. When you were in a relationship that should have ended, what is the craziest thing you did to prevent the breakup? Was it a call, a message, or something much riskier? Like this video if you know what it's like to lose yourself in someone else. Subscribe to follow my journey of putting myself back together. And tell me honestly, was my obsession driven by love or just my own inadequacy?